The power of karma. As an Otsutsuki god who evolved by eating the chakra fruit, he has repeatedly undergone karmic awakening that will eventually make him immortal and will never die. Oh yeah, today is my day. Before the Chapter 15 leak is released, let's continue this until Chapter 80. But before that, please like and subs, guys. Thanks. After in the previous chapter, Amado explained in detail to Naruto about Damon and Ida, why they can get abilities like that. This is where everything will be revealed. Naruto was initially curious in how Amado created them, but he confirmed that all of them were not his creations. In other words, Shinjutsu and abilities beyond reason did not originate because of his creation. But crazy abilities and powers can only be possessed by gods, and Amado said that he only transplanted existing ones. An ability that is only possessed by them is something that has truly evolved into a godlike being called Otsutsuki Shibai. Although they were really shocked to hear a name called Otsutsuki Shibai, but according to Amado, he is no longer with them, and all that exists are his remains. Basically, the chakra fruit is a manifestation formed from a collection of chakras that absorbs all life on a planet. And as Otsutsuki, in order to avoid death, he evolved by eating the chakra fruit until he repeatedly reincarnated so that his goal could be achieved. That's right, avoiding death. And if he eats a lot of fruit for several millennia, then eventually he will continue to evolve until he reaches a status that is said to be equivalent to a god. But in essence, that as Amado's human creations, Ida, Daemon, and others, when they were created, there were Otsutsuki Shibai cells embedded in their bodies. And as owners of Shinjutsu and divine abilities, Amado's human creations will inherit some of the divine abilities possessed by Otsutsuki Shibai. Although it's not all and equal in power, but it's enough to sound very terrifying with proven facts like, for example, Daemon's ability to reflect all attacks. Even he was also able to capture the black rod of Sukuna Hikona that Ishiki passed down to Kawaki. But if this ability is possessed by Shibai, maybe this will sound 10 times more powerful. That's what God is like, right? And because this sounded so absurd, Shikamaru always gave the same response. And it was a response where he doubted what Amado said. And even so, Naruto still wanted to listen to what was known about Shibai Otsutsuki. Amado then explained again that there was one thing that really sounded crazy. And as a god, he could create storms just by waving his hand and summon lightning just by shouting like he was angry. And that was all without having to use the ninjutsu seal mark. And in essence, all abilities that were equivalent to gods were not like ninjutsu or anything else. And that was called Shinjutsu. And some of the techniques or jutsu that they have seen lately, starting from Code's ability to use claw marks, Ida, who can manipulate thoughts, Daemon, who can reflect all attacks, and the last is Kawaki, who has inherited Ishiki abilities such as Sukuna Hikona and Daikokuten. And all of that is part of the Shinjutsu owned by Otsutsuki Shibai. And as another example of what Momoshiki did to Boruto for leaving his karma, this is also part of the reincarnation performed by Otsutsuki Shibai through karma, and can be called the art of immortality. And maybe what's interesting about this conversation is when a very good question was asked by Shikamaru, because at first Amado explained that with reincarnation karma, Otsutsuki Shibai could live forever. Then why now Amado said that he had died, and the remains which Amado then used to transplant into several cyborgs of his creation. Whereas supposedly, if Otsutsuki Shibai continued to reincarnate for eternal life, he would not die and leave his body on Earth, right? But from that question, Amado did not know clearly about what happened. Even Amado also assumed that Otsutsuki had been killed. But apart from that, Amado also assumed that as a god, and had gone through the process of reincarnation and evolution many times, then with him ascending to a higher dimension, it meant that he no longer needed a physical body. And maybe that means, as a transcended being, it can be said that he no longer needs reincarnation or a vessel, right? In other words, maybe Amado's hypothesis sounds very reasonable, because by reaching the final level of evolution and having moved or ascended to a higher dimension, it means that he no longer needs his physical body. And maybe this is the reason why Amado can find and use his body. And it is here that we finally find out what was the purpose of the previous Amado who implanted karma into Kawaki, again without his permission. And as Otsutsuki, Amado has the hope that it will have a power and ability that is impossible to become something that is possible. An example is resurrecting death. And Amado mentions that he wants to resurrect his dead daughter back to life. But before continuing what Amado meant, Delta suddenly came to meet Ida. Even Sarada forbade Delta to come to this place, but Delta begged Sarada not to say this to Shikamaru because Delta really wanted to meet Ida. Although in the end, Delta continued to insist and beg to meet with Ida, Sumire, who had arrived at the place, immediately deactivated Delta's consciousness by saying, "Delta, time to go to sleep," an emergency code that has been implanted in Delta's body to control it. And Sumire says that Delta should not be able to go against her or Katasuke's orders. But from this, I'm pretty sure that Ida's ability can even damage the program that has created Delta to make it out of control. And again, this is an insane divine ability. Then we continue Amado's chat about his desire to restore his daughter's life, which is an event that has passed 12 years ago. And the death of Amado's daughter, it was the day that Boruto was also born into the world. Akebi is the name of Amado's daughter who suffered from a terrible disease. Even from the terrible disease that Akebi suffered from, Amado mentions that there is no effective cure or antidote. Even because of the fatality of the disease, the doctor who treated the disease gave up. And even though the cause of the disease is unknown, Amado believes in himself that he can find a solution and solve all of these situations. In a laboratory in Kara, he makes a new body for Akebi. Even in frustrating situations, Amado doesn't care about values and ethics. Because of him, making a new body sounds very reasonable compared to fixing a defective body. Because as a scientist, doing this is something he has mastered. Making a new body is easier than making a cure for Akebi's defective body. And at the time of Akebi's death, Amado felt that he was not sad. Even with his abilities and wits that could be said that he was crazy and very unreasonable, Amado preserved some parts of Akebi's dead body and digitized some parts of his memory and others. And after 9 months passed from Akebi's death, a girl was created with the same voice and even appearance and memories as well. But she was a total stranger. A girl we now know as Delta. And with a desperate face and feeling increasingly frustrated that she does have all of Akebi's memories, but she is not Akebi, Amado essentially realizes and admits that this is not his domain. With a feeling of utter sadness and disappointment, Amado also finally realizes that his daughter is really gone. But when Amado felt a deep sense of hopelessness and sadness because of his failure to bring his daughter back to life, he met Jigen, who at that time promised Amado that if he helped him, then Amado would be reunited with his daughter. In other words, if Jigen's goal was achieved, then as a reward he would bring his daughter back to life. But because he heard that the reward was the life of his daughter, Amado finally cooperated with Kara to help Jigen's goal of creating the chakra fruit. But because he was influenced by his promise to bring his daughter back to life, Amado did not realize that behind Jigen's goal of doing so would ultimately sacrifice the lives of the planet. And in conclusion, Amado felt that the mission he was undertaking was futile, because if he helped Jigen, it would mean nothing if he got his daughter back, but instead would make the planet or the world cease to exist. Although with this, it sounded that Amado gave up on bringing his daughter back to life, but Amado admits that he hasn't given up at all. Because although initially Jigen didn't explain how he resurrected Amado's daughter, but when he tried to relent, Jigen he saw a way or an answer to the problem. The mechanism of karmic resurrection. Because according to Amado's analysis, what Ishiki did through his vessel and the method used to produce Akebi using the clone turned out to be almost the same. And in conclusion, Amado's purpose at the beginning of re-implanting karma on his body without Kawaki's permission was not just a desire for Kawaki to protect Naruto, but it was also based on Amado's personal purpose. Because by adding Akebi's data to Kawaki's reconstructed karma, then all Kawaki had to do was implant karma in the new clone body that Amado would prepare. And with that, this was enough to revive Akebi. I am truly grateful to Kawaki. We know that since childhood, Kawaki has been using Jigen as its vessel. Beyond the discussion of the torture experienced by Kawaki with Jigen, But this is the fact that now he is obsessed with Naruto for treating him so well that he is willing to sacrifice everything to protect him. Even though it had to kill Boruto because there was a Momoshiki inside his body, Kawaki's way is not wrong, but it is not right either. Yeah, I thought you would understand what I mean. Oh yeah. After everything Amado said, including using Kawaki for his own personal purposes to bring his daughter back to life, Shikamaru still doubts Amado's story. He even asks Ida to prove through her Senrigan eyes that can see the past whether it is true that Amado has a daughter or not. Although this sounds cruel, but that's Shikamaru's job. But before Ida explains the truth, I think that's enough for our review this time, guys. And before the leak of Chapter 15 is released, I will finish this as soon as possible. Thanks to those of you who have liked and subs. I'm Nim. See you in the next chapter. Bye bye, Databayo.